We are Rogue Media Sports.
It's one thing falling in love with a house, picturing yourself moving in and calling it home, and quite another navigating the world of price negotiating, mortgage lenders, and finding the budget that works best for you. An agent who's a Realtor can make understanding that world easier. Realtors have the expertise, access to proprietary data, and tools to help you get from imagining living somewhere to actually doing it. That's the kind of help we can provide. Because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
And it is the Doomsday podcast, a very special edition with the Cowboys temporarily saving their season, saving the jobs of both Jason Garrett, Scott Linehan perhaps, with a gutsy win on the road against the Eagles, and we're so happy to have you along. We're coming to you from Frito Nation Productions, and then, of course, we have Ed Werder always with us on the Doomsday podcast, coming from our other studio in Colorado that we've built, and it's a beautiful place up there. Oh, it is gorgeous, and so happy that you're there.
A lot of natural stone, tremendous mountain views. Really enjoy the time we spend here.
Yeah, love having you there in that studio. And Ed, this is a big one. We're going to break this thing down from a lot of different standpoints, but boy, even before the game, a tone was set. Now, I did notice the Eagles fans brought an actual coffin to this game. I don't know if you saw. I've seen pictures of this. It was a real coffin, and somebody.
I guess they took it home kind of empty.
That's right. They came to bury the Cowboys and were not able to do so. A 27-20 win for the Cowboys to improve to 4-5 and at least temporarily save the season. But Ed, there was some chippiness even before this ball game, and this one coach that you and I have had on Doomsday and has gotten a lot of praise was right in the middle of this thing.
Yeah, Chris Richard brings a lot of intensity. He became semi-famous, I guess, for the first time among Dallas fans because he was the coach who was so involved that he actually wore cleats to practice. But there was some kind of fracas before the game as the two teams gathered on the field and were going through pregame warm-ups, and no specific explanation for exactly what happened, but Ezekiel Elliott wound up pulling Richard away from whoever it was he was having a difference of opinion with, shall we say. And Zeke said, I'm not really a guy who talks a lot of smack. We talk with our play. We talk with our pads. We were just wasting time, wasting energy, yapping before the game. And Richard said he was just trying to keep the peace and keep his players focused on football. So I guess they're saying the Eagles are to blame for whatever it was that happened.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me that they would put that on the Eagles. But, boy, the Cowboys find a way in this. Ed, so much to come. We've got Glenn Stretch Smith, known for his profane ways, and former Cowboys scout and coach, and I know he's going to be fired up, and I would have to say he's, based on this win, I don't think he's going to be real harsh with his grades this evening.
I mean, how can you be? The Cowboys are 4-5. How can you criticize them?
You can't. This is I
would say we didn't expect anything more than this.
It's one of the best 4-5 teams in the NFL.
We expected the head coach to be coaching for his job and the offensive coordinator to be coaching for his job at the halfway point of the season. Of course, those were the expectations.
And by the way, this head coach, we've asked for it for years. You say it's not in his DNA to be a risk taker. Tonight, he threw caution to the wind. We're going to talk about that. We're going to hit this thing from every single angle.
We're going to talk about Leighton Vander Esch and the brilliant decision to draft him in the first round. We're going to talk about Ezekiel Elliott justifying being the 4th overall pick in his draft, and whether Dak Prescott is once again angling for an extension from Jerry Jones.
It's all next. Frito, please play the music. It is a very, we're not used to doing this. We have put up some huge numbers this year thanks to you guys, and we really appreciate it. And the community, the Doomsday community, has grown, but you guys seem to respond extremely well to losses. I'm really hoping you'll respond to this rare win.
My kind of people.
But I mean,
it's Doomsday. I mean, come on.
It is the Doomsday podcast,
not the Sunshine Boys. It's Doomsday.
No, I know.
People
and we
like to talk about impending doom.
Yes. But for one night, Ed, this team gathered in South Philly and produced a win. And for all the world, there were several times when I thought, okay, this is a Doomsday moment. This is and not in the good way of the old Doomsday defense. This is a Doomsday moment when Maher, I don't even want to learn his name ever because I really think you got to cut him at some point. I do not trust this guy. I know he had a good start, but anyway, miss it. First of all, Ed, he barely makes the 25-yarder. I mean, barely snuck that in. The other short field goal later was okay, and then he just didn't even get close. Did not even get close from 42 yards, which is not 42 yards is nothing for an NFL kicker. It shouldn't be anything for an NFL kicker. So I thought when that happened, I thought when they got down there and weren't making touchdowns and when it was only 6-0, and then I even thought at the end of the half when they were basically
it was gonna be like last week, right?
Yeah.
They had all these opportunities early to take a big lead. And
Totally.
Failed, and they wind up losing the game. But this was a different outcome.
This was a different outcome. Here's one area that I want to, and we'll get to some of the daring do, Jason Garrett, the man who's suddenly taking all sorts of risks. And he was ready, by the way, to go for it on 4th and down in his own territory. And then there was a flinch. I believe that was
Jeff Swaim.
That was Jeff Swaim over there. I tweeted, and Frito liked this tweet, that Swaim was ordered by Jason Garrett to flinch.
Because he really wanted to punt.
Because he did not.
Look like he was a risk taker, at least for a minute.
Yes. Everything worked out perfectly for him. But, okay, it's 6-3. They make a 56-yard field goal. It seems that all the sort of positive things they did were really going to go for naught. You weren't going to feel great going in at 6-3, but they were willing to do so. I mean, there's a handoff on 1st down, and they don't have any timeouts left, and they're basically just trying to get to the half. I did have this thought. I wish I had tweeted it because it would have made me look more clairvoyant than I actually am. But the fact that I thought the Eagles got a little cute. I thought that was Doug Peterson, and I know he's a risk taker himself. But I thought when they started burning those timeouts, I was kind of thinking, you know what? It's not like you're going to get it back with like great field position. They were calling timeouts, and really the best field position they would have had was like at the 20 or 25-yard line with maybe 50 seconds left and no timeouts. And I know they got a great quarterback, but what were your thoughts there? And obviously, we know that ended up becoming an enormous part of this football game.
That was it actually led to the drive by Dak Prescott that makes Jerry Jones believe that Prescott, is a franchise type of quarterback. It allowed the Cowboys a touchdown that gave them a 13-3 halftime lead. Dak hit 4 straight passes from clean pockets and then snuck in for the touchdown. Had nearly 200 yards passing in the first half. But that was an 8-play, 75-yard drive that only lasted a minute 14. And Dak had completions of 15, 25, 21, and 17 yards. I mean, it was Dak Prescott at his absolute best. And the touchdown was his 15th since he's come into the league as a rushing quarterback, and that ties Cam Newton for the most in the league during that period of time. But it certainly gave the Cowboys a lot of momentum, certainly knowing that they were coming out in the second half and they were going to get the ball again to start that half. So, and the irony of it was Dak's first play in each half was a sack. He got sacked both times. He's now been sacked more times than any quarterback in the NFL. But obviously, I thought he played one of his better games ultimately and was able to overcome all of that early adversity and the thing you're talking about with Doug Peterson and whether he was trying to get the ball back one more time and wound up, creating a catalyst for the Cowboys to go score the go-ahead points in the half.
He did, and the other thing where I thought was the moment, Ed, that all Cowboys fans were like, okay, this thing's over, and we'll talk to Stretch about this as well when he breaks down the play of the offensive line. But Zach Martin, and after the game, by the way, Dak Prescott called him the best player on the team. They already had that Suafilo in there, and that guy was
Suafilo.
Yeah, he was a former second-round pick, and he's had a lot of starts in the NFL. But I mean, you already have him in there playing left guard, and then you for Connor Williams, who's out injured, the rookie, and then you lose Zach Martin. I mean, Ed, at that moment, the way that looked, I would have been shocked if you told me, Zach Martin's going to come back in this game. It just did not look good. And he had to go in the tent, and he had to go to the locker room after that, I guess, to kind of check on everything, check on the knee. At that point, I would have bet pretty much the entire Doomsday budget, and it's a big one. I would have bet all of that the Cowboys were going to lose that game, the way it looked at that point.
First of all, it should be a huge budget because you never spend any of the money that you've gone out and created to fund this campaign.
Spent plenty on you. You're the highest paid guy in the whole damn thing.
But beyond that, I mean, because you're talking about a situation where you're in a hostile environment, playing the defending Super Bowl champions at a night where they're trying to put your lights out, and your best player, Ezekiel Elliott, is dependent on an offensive line that was once dominant and now basically features three interior players who are all backups, right? The left guard, the center, and the right guard with Zach Martin out are all backup players. So a lot of credit goes to those guys because, as it turned out, Ezekiel Elliott was the dominant offensive factor in the game. He had over 150 yards rushing for the fifth time in his career. That's the most in the league since he came in as a fourth overall pick in 2016. It's the highest total that the Eagles have allowed all season, topping the 139 that Saquon Barkley had against them. So they're playing against the number 2 ranked run defense in football with 2 and sometimes 3 backup offensive linemen. And to put that kind of performance together, all of those circumstances considered, is quite an accomplishment, I think, for the Cowboys, and is the major reason that they won the game.
Yeah, and it speaks highly of Mark Colombo and Hud Houck, who've been brought in, and they've now had a couple of weeks with this unit, and perhaps they are getting back. I mean, Tyron Smith, you talk about a guy who's been dominant in the past. His play had slipped. He really seemed to have a strong ball game and was just dominant at times. And I thought that has to be a great sign for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Graham had a sack on the very first play because La'el Collins couldn't block him. And then the Cowboys opened the second half, and they tried a bootleg play where they left him unblocked, and he crushed Prescott. I was surprised he got up, given how violently he was hit. But for the most part, other than those couple of plays, I'm not sure we heard Fletcher Cox's name all night. And he's one of the most dominant defensive tackles in all of football. And like we said, at times they were playing with the, 3 interior positions, all consisting of backup players. So, yeah, you're right. Great credit to those players and to Mark Colombo and Hudson Houck.
Okay, and we'll walk through some of these big moments in the game. A play that is sure to, if something becomes of this. I think later we'll hit this 3rd and 15 play because that one was. Obviously we have hit on that the play to extend that drive at the end of the half there, but the play that set up the field goal that made it 6-0 is just one of the plays you just marvel at. We know that Zeke Elliott is a unbelievable athlete. You forget that he was a great hurdler in high school. But to see a player, it's one thing to go up in the air and show how high you can jump. It's another to, in the open field, to literally show good form and to hurdle that defender. I believe that was Sullivan in the open field, and then to land on your feet. And really, the only thing that would have been better, obviously, is if he could have gone on in for the touchdown. For whatever reason, he couldn't quite get his balance back after that. But in terms of athletic plays, you might not see a more impressive play for a running back this entire season in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't. And the inability to maintain his balance obviously prevented a touchdown and eventually cost them 4 points as they had to settle for a field goal again because once they got inside the 5, he didn't touch the ball again, which is inexplicable to me. But and that was all set up by one of the uncharacteristic Jason Garrett decisions of this season, a guy who has been criticized for his conservative thought process and game management in losses on the road at Houston and Washington. Took a different approach this time, and the Elliott play came after the 4th and 2 fake punt, Jeff Heath advancing the ball, getting the first down, prolonging the drive. And, this whole game may just postpone the inevitable failure that the season ultimately seems likely to be. But this successful interlude seemed at least temporarily valuable. I mean, the Cowboys showed some imagination, performed with some precision, resolve, tenacity for their first road win of the year. And Garrett, I thought, coached with the abandon of a man recognizing his chances of remaining the coach of the Cowboys without a dramatic turn of events was approximately as small as Michael Bennett's comically tiny shoulder pads. And I thought the decision to go for it on the fake punt with Heath kind of was the ultimate demonstration of that. And Jerry Jones, after the game, lauded it, saying he liked going for it on 4th down. He loved it. He thinks that these games are so close that sometimes that's what's called for, not every time. But he said, quote, I think if we don't take some of those risks, we don't come out of here with a win. Well, if you're going to praise Garrett as the owner for those two decisions, then obviously he didn't feel quite the same way in the 2 games I cited earlier where Garrett went conservative and cost his team potential wins on the road.
No, and we've talked about that before, how interesting it is to have this risk-taking owner who loves taking risk both in the draft. I mean, he's done it in his career, his oil wildcatting ways. I mean, he wanted to buy the San Diego Chargers years before he even got the Cowboys when he basically didn't have any money. He was going to try to do that with his
credit
dad's
card at the car rental agency, a day later or something like that.
Yeah. It was he was struggling, but he still wanted to buy a team back then, and so he has this coach who just does not really want to push the envelope. And yet in this game, I think you're right. I think there was a desperation. And what you hope is, Ed, you learn from that. Does that mean you just go willy-nilly and go for it every time? No. But, it does show that there are times, especially on the road in this environment, when your team's 3-5, that you have to take some chances. You can't play to not make mistakes. You've got to go all out, and I think the team really appreciated that. And I even heard, Ed, I don't know if you've seen this in some of the post game. Jason apparently made a pretty good speech last night. So Jason kind of brought everything out. You only have so many of those speeches you can make during a season. I think Jason has even fewer of those moments than most coaches, but he pulled that out. And then the fake, it's funny. A lot of times you'll see on a fake punt something interesting happen in terms of the punter rolling out, making a throw, that kind of thing. In this instance, it was almost like a rugby play. It was like, let's get this guy, get him kind of in a scrum and get everybody moving. And Heath did a nice job. I would have to say, I can't really remember, but I would imagine Heath played some offensive football when he was at Rockwall, whichever Rockwall High School he was at. I would assume he played some on that side of the ball, and he kept those legs churning, and that gives a team that really can give a team the impetus to go on and do something. Now, Ed.
Well, and the funny thing is that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but no. I think the amazing thing is as we talk about Garrett's willingness to take risk in this situation where he wouldn't earlier in the season. And we talked about the thing that he clings to in developing his game plan. And as he listens to Scott Linehan call the play through his headset, is that he tries not to make mistakes, as you said, to a point that it becomes counterproductive. And yet in this game where they were willing to take some risk, and they were willing to not only gamble on 3rd and 4th downs, but to be more aggressive and to use the passing game to set up the run game, recognizing it was going to be difficult to run against the Eagles if they knew that's what you wanted to do early in the game. I thought they gave Dak Prescott some freedom to throw the football in situations where ordinarily they might not, and he played an error-free game, and now they're 21-1 when he doesn't throw an interception. As was the case in this particular game. And, they beat an Eagles team that had the NFL's best record coming off a bye week, and they won on the road for the first time, scoring the most points they'd scored in any road game to this point in the season. So there were a lot of positives, and I guess that's why Jerry Jones, when he was leaving the locker room, said when you're feeling low and seeing the Grim Reaper, and then you come in and have your team perform the way these guys did, I promise you it's a special feeling. I won't need any wings on that airplane getting back to Dallas. So he obviously thinks it's a huge turning point in the Cowboys season.
Yeah, I think in we've talked about it. This guy does not. Jerry does not want to fire Jason Garrett. It's not like he's looking forward to it. It's not like he gets excited about the talk of Lincoln Riley and all these things and the reports that are out there. He would do anything if they could turn it around and somehow jump back in this playoff race. So we'll see. I mean, this really means nothing if they don't follow it up with another win and climb back to 500. It just at least kind of preserves the chance for something like that to happen. Now, Ed, I'd be remiss, and of course we'll get to Stretch here in a second. But one thing I wanted to get into, and you and I have both been critical at times of some of these draft picks. We both noted that the Calvin Ridley pick that the Atlanta made as he started getting all those touchdowns early in the season, and the Cowboys
7 touchdowns for the rookie receiver, right, that they passed on.
The Cowboys passed on him and took the Wolf Killer, the Leighton Vander Esch. Man has no regard for animals, but he has no regard for running backs either. And this is a guy, I think tonight, we've seen kind of a coming of age. We've seen some really good games. If there was going to be sort of a passing of the torch type moment, it certainly seems like it happened tonight. You had great moments from both Jalen Smith and Vander Esch, but Vander Esch really helped seal the game with the unbelievable play that he made to put the Eagles in a situation where they had to go for it on fourth down. We're not able to get it. Came up a yard short. And that play that he made to go out there and get Clement in the open field and take on two tacklers. Ed, as far as just a one player type moment, you won't get any better than that on defense. That was pretty remarkable.
Well, we remember, to create context when the Cowboys decided to draft Leighton Vander Esch, and a lot of teams in the league expected that that's who the player they had targeted. Obviously, no receiver had been drafted, and the Cowboys had released Dez Bryant, so it wouldn't have been a surprise at all had they opted for a wide receiver. But I think that even before this game, Leighton Vander Esch, in his previous starts as a rookie for Sean Lee when he was injured in weeks 4, 5, and 6, completely justified their thought process in drafting Vander Esch, even though now they had to go surrender another next year's first-round pick to acquire the wide receiver they didn't take in the trade for Amari Cooper. But, you're right. I mean, he made the two crucial defensive plays in the game. He had the interception of Carson Wentz and the 28-yard run back that set up their first points of the game. And then he made the tackle in the open field while being blocked, getting Corey Clement to the ground for a loss on a play that could have been a big gainer and really flipped the outcome. So he, we have to remember that not long ago, the Cowboys were 1-8 in games they played without Sean Lee. And this year, they're 3-1 without Sean Lee. And Leighton Vander Esch is the primary reason for that. And, talking to people with the Cowboys tonight about Vander Esch, they said, hey, we felt like he could have this kind of impact, that Will McClay, the personnel director, fell in love with him in December. They felt like he could play a lot of positions, that he had size, speed, and range that were evident. But the best thing that they loved about him were his instincts. Also consider him obviously a very smart guy who doesn't make the same mistake twice. And the defensive coaches really feel like he's getting better every week. And we know what he's accomplished when Lee is out. They're 3-1. They can still play winning football without Sean Lee for the first time in a very long time. And he's played so well that even when Sean Lee's healthy, he still gets playing time at Sean Lee's expense.
I think what you're trying to say is once Sean Lee is healthy, you do not bring him back.
I did not say that, but thank you for putting words in my mouth and trying to bring me the scorn and ridicule of Cowboys Nation, which I experience all too often.
They love you. They really do.
Yeah, no. I think I think Sean is obviously playing a key role in the development of both Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith. And I saw Teddy Bruschi, the former Super Bowl winning linebacker with the Patriots, tweeted tonight after the game that if their development continues on the current trajectory, that it won't be long before Jalen Smith and Leighton Van Der Esch might be the best linebacker tandem in all of football.
Wow, that is it's remarkable to think of. And watching Jalen Smith race all the way down the field, covering Alshon Jeffrey, he's got elite athleticism, and then just both of them really showed up big in this game. And we're going to have some time to get into some of this with Stretch, and then, of course, we'll have some closing thoughts as we always do.
Because I still want to talk about the other element there, the Amari Cooper part of the equation. So I'll follow your lead on that. I do have some thoughts on that.
I'll leave you some time. I just wanted to take this opportunity to brag on one of our partners, and that is MyBookie. And I don't think a lot of people were dying to bet Cowboys, although Cowboys fans are a strange bunch. But MyBookie, they do an incredible job and been in business for years, have unbelievable reviews online. Their mobile site is easy to use. One thing, Ed, I think you're going to be excited about, I kind of held off on the big watch party that we're going to have with MyBookie because I want you to be there. I want people to kind of see what it's like to be in the presence of Ed Werder. Here's the thing about MyBookie. You win, they pay. They have in-game live betting, the most rewarding player perks in the business. And here's how you do it. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Use the promo code Doomsday, DOOMSDAY, to activate the offer. Visit MyBookie online today. That's MyBookie, MyBookie, and don't forget to use the promo code Doomsday when creating your account to claim up to $1,000 in free play. You play, you win, you get paid. And it is time to get with Glenn Stretch Smith for our very, very famous segment. That's a Stretch. And Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys coach and scout. And Stretch, before we jump right into the defense and go over some of these grades, your overall thoughts on a 27-20 win for the Cowboys and what this means for the season and what this means for the coaching staff.
Well, I thought that, obviously this team came and they played out with their backs against the wall. I mean, it was Jason coached that way. I mean, you saw him going for it on fourth down. They ran the fake punt. I mean, they pretty much emptied what I felt like was some of the playbook. I liked what they did with Noah Brown. I mean, there were some guys in the game that, quite frankly, we hadn't seen before. I mean, Schultz came in the game, made some plays. So I think they really stepped it up and said, hey, you know what, our backs are against the wall here. We got nothing to lose. And I think that's how they called the game. And quite frankly, I think that's how they played the game in every phase. Offensively, defensively, special teams. I thought right there before the half to throw that slant and pick up that first down when Philadelphia had called that timeout, turned into a big play for him. And so I just saw some things tonight that I felt like I haven't seen in a while from a Jason Garrett coach team.
Boy, it was interesting to see a guy, and Ed and I will continue to talk about this, a guy who's been on the Doomsday podcast, Doug Peterson, a Super Bowl winning coach, make that decision at the end of the half to call those timeouts and, in a sense, allow the Cowboys to do what they did, although none of us at 3rd and 15 really expected a huge play like that. Also really crazy Stretch. And I would be, just from a coaching standpoint, when you saw Jim Schwartz put those about 6 players along the sticks there like he did, was that one of the stranger just as far as the schemes that you've seen, or was that not as odd looking as it was to you as it was to a lot of us?
Well, I've seen some teams do that before. I've seen the Cowboys do that before. I mean, put people back and say, look, go rally to the football, chase everything in front of you. And, that didn't really strike me as being something that I thought, well, that's really strange at that point in the game. I thought it was going to be, I really thought they kind of decided it was going to be a low-scoring game, and they felt like they were trying to keep everything in front of them. So I'm not real sure that I could say anything other than schematically, what they had didn't work the way they wanted it to.
All right, let's move through the defense, and let's start with the secondary. And we saw Alshon Jeffrey late make about a 17-yard grab there on Byron Jones. We saw Wousier make some big plays in this game. And then, of course, we saw Jeff Heath get beat on a bomb, 51-yard bomb. What was your overall thoughts on the defensive backfield? And then, of course, what grade do you give them?
Well, I thought Wousier made some really, really fine plays. I thought the secondary played really well. I got a little aggravated that, Peterson likes to run slants. You wanted to see guys set a little more heavy inside. But when you look at the overall game plan, I think, and how the Cowboys secondary played, I thought they played well as a unit. They got beat some. I mean, the other guys, they're on scholarship too, and they're going to win. I mean, there were some great throws, and there were some plays that were made, but I really thought at critical times the Cowboys secondary stepped up. Wousier tipping that ball away, Heath coming up and making that tackle on fourth down. So I really thought that this group played well and gave you a winning effort and a winning grade, and therefore I got to give this group a B+.
And Stretch, I mean, I would say one of the things that we'll always look back at this game, no matter what happens this season, is this seemed to be the coming-of-age moment for Leighton Vander Esch, and just a remarkable game for him. He had the early interception, a nice return on just a real head-scratching throw by Wentz, and then, late in the game, desperately the defense needing to try to seal this win, he takes on the two blockers and really made what you could call just the biggest play in this game, certainly on defense by the Cowboys. What were your thoughts on the linebackers?
Well, I have heard all along that, they being the Cowboys scouting staff, really compared him to Urlacher, and I thought, wow, those are big shoes to fill. But when you saw tonight what he did, chasing the football sideline to sideline, as physical as he was, attacking blocks downhill, I thought he made a great play on the interception. He almost dokey-oked the quarterback because it looked like he was going to sit on that slant, and they were running that dig right behind it. They were going to throw that ball right off his ear, and he had seen that before. That's something I think they had practiced on, and he had seen it, and he made a great play on the football. Now, I'll be the first one to say I was very critical of this pick. I mean, I have thought, oh, my goodness. I mean, here's a guy coming from 8-man football who had to walk on, and you know what? You got to put all that beside, and now you got to just grade him for how he plays. And he and Jalen Smith tonight, very physical. I mean, on fourth down for Jalen Smith to come attack that play downhill, I mean, it is a physical group of linebackers. And as a Cowboys fan, as a Cowboys, someone that grades the Cowboys, studies the Cowboys, it's refreshing to see that when Sean Lee's not in the game, this group is getting it done, and they got it done in a big-time fashion tonight. I got to give that group an A.
What about the defensive line? I mean, Randy Gregory had a little bit of an impact early on after missing last week's game. They seemed like they're obviously still missing David Irving. They suffered a couple of injuries during the game, got somewhat depleted there. Did they create the kind of pressure you expected on Carson Wentz, given Lane Johnson was out of the game and Jason Peters is compromised?
Well, I thought they did a nice job of keeping him kind of in the pocket. I mean, where Doug Peterson, I think, excels is getting him out on the edge, and they did a good job of keeping him in there. They let him get outside some, but I thought they created some pressure. I thought Crawford played well. Lawrence played well. You talked about the play Gregory made. I think the inside guys, Woods, Collins, I mean, they're tough kind of get after you all day, kind of hard-hat guys. And I thought that group played a heck of a game, and for that, I'm going to give that defensive line a B.
All right, a B for the defensive line from Stretch. The A, of course, goes to the linebackers. And let's hop over there and talk about this offense. And let's start, Stretch, with the quarterback. Much maligned, certainly had one that it could have been a pick six early in this game. Overall, the accuracy was questionable early in this game. Just missed a couple of throws you really can't miss as an NFL quarterback, but kind of settled down and made some tremendous throws when the game was on the line and when they needed to rally and answer the Eagles when it was 2020. I just thought some of those deep outs that he hit on the money, and when he sets his feet, he just seems to make some really good throws. This is a guy who was really challenged and really looked bad last week. And from my vantage point, he answered pretty well. What did you think?
Well, I think you made a key point, and that is setting his feet. When he gets his feet set, he can throw the football. I mean, that out route to Cole Beasley was as pretty a route as I've seen early in the game. He kind of opened his left foot up, and he missed with some deep outs. He missed with the football, but I think that he'll continue to get better. Philadelphia tonight was not going to let him get outside that pocket. I mean, you saw how wide they were bringing Bennett. They were bringing those guys off the edge really to keep him in the pocket. And quite frankly, I thought he stood in there and made some critical throws. And that, to me, that's big for that young man. I think that's going to be big for his confidence. You know, they say he's only accurate on the move, but I saw tonight him make some throws in the pocket that I felt like were Aikmanesque, and because of that, I'm going to give him a B+ and bordering on an A. I thought he played a heck of a game.
And how about that money drive right before the half? A minute,
Exactly.
14 seconds, 75 yards, take the lead. Pretty impressive stuff there. He had 4 completions in the drive.
Yeah, and that's right, Ed. I mean, he really stepped up. He was challenged on multiple times during the football game, and I thought he stepped up and answered that challenge. And that's not easy to do. And I think there's a lot of questions out there on: is he going to be the guy? Isn't he going to be the guy? Is he going to get the long-term contract? Is he a franchise type guy? To step up and answer that the way he did tonight with his team, absolutely. And they had to win that football game. He answered them, and he answered that bell, and he really produced the win. And between he and the running back, I mean, this offense as a whole, it was fun to watch them get back to kind of doing what they do.
Well, let's talk about the running back. 25 touches for Ezekiel Elliott, 187 yards from scrimmage, a touchdown rushing, a touchdown receiving. He said this was a must-win game, and then he went out and essentially won the game as much as any one individual did.
Yeah, and I thought they did a nice job of getting him the football. They had some two-back runs designed for him where, some ISO-type plays where he was able to kind of do what he does, which is get those shoulders and get that head going north and south. I mean, how athletic was that he jumped that safety? I mean, I thought that was an amazing play. The best play that I thought he made for the night, though, was when he blocked 2 guys off the edge. He hit the inside guy and then dove and hit the outside guy and allowed Dak to get rid of the football. I mean, he is an all-around football player. I was listening to the broadcast, and you hear Collinsworth say, hey, can you build a football team around a running game? Well, I mean, my answer for that would be if you don't have Pat Mahomes or you don't have you don't have Drew Brees, you don't have Tom Brady,
Aaron Rodgers.
You don't have those kind of guys, Aaron Rodgers, those kind of guys who get rid of the football real quick. You still have to be able to run the football, and I think that's how the Cowboys won tonight. And I got no problem with where they picked him and what they did. I damn sure wouldn't second guess that young man. He's a hell of a football player, and because of that, I'm giving him an A.
Yeah, and that play you talked about, one of the what an unbelievable. And a lot of times you see players jump up in the air, and it's you can be disastrous results. But when you have that kind of athleticism to actually jump over a guy that was standing up and have nice form doing it, the only thing is he just couldn't keep his feet. and go on in for the touchdown. Now, let's look at this offensive line. I just heard Dak Prescott. Of course, we're taping this in just the immediate aftermath of this game. I was listening in the postgame news conference. Dak Prescott said he called Zach Martin the best player on our team. And that tells you the kind of admiration they have for him. I think a lot of us thought the minute he was down on the ground and he left the game, the Cowboys' any chances of winning that game went out the window. But he was able to get back. What did you make of that overall line play?
I thought they played their ass off, and I'm telling you, I thought
there it is.
I thought
there it is. The first profanity.
I'm too old, Ed, to sit up here and say butt, bobo, bottom, whatever verbiage you want me to use, but that's it. I thought they played really, really well. I saw some things tonight. I saw some nastiness tonight. I saw this line play with an edge to them, and you can tell that they're back to playing that technique where, Suafilo gets bull rushed, and he just turns Cullen and just throws him to the ground. Almost bench pressed him to the ground, and it's refreshing to watch that. It's refreshing to watch these guys come off the football. So I'm giving that group an A, and I think that this group is back to showing you something that they were 2 years ago, and you got to hope that continues.
I was just kidding with you there, Stretch. So it sounds like you think that you think the change that was made during the bye week to promote Mark Colombo and bring in Hudson Houck is beginning to have the desired effect.
I saw that tonight with what I saw with how physical they were at the point of contact, with how physical they were with their punch. Down there on the goal line, I thought it was they manhandled some guys, and to me that's what the Cowboys are about. That's kind of what this offensive line was built on, a little bit of that nastiness, and I saw that, and I think that's that is a direct reflection, like you said, of HUD coming in here and kind of re-energizing this group. Colombo kind of getting back to some of the techniques that he was taught by HUD, and obviously teaching those guys back to that hey, sit, punch, and then be physical coming off during the run.
I had to laugh. The NFL Network had a report today that said that the Cowboys in the off week, in the bye week, in addition to talking about getting rid of Paul Alexander, which they did, they thought about throwing Scott Linehan overboard. And then they also mentioned that there might have been a time this offseason where they wanted to perhaps move on from Linehan, decided not to. And while that was an interesting story, I just wanted to say people that have been listening to Doomsday have kind of heard all of that along the way. So, in Stretch, you've brought a lot of that to the table, so I just kind of wanted to, kind of toot our own horn, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that, I think that has been a question all year. Did Jason really want to get rid of a guy like Wade Wilson, who, he'd been a quarterback with here, who those kind of things, and I think there was a power struggle with inside that building. And I think, if the truth be known, it's my understanding that Jason wanted to maybe make that change and quite frankly wasn't able to do it. So, I think all those things are obviously a reflection of a 4-5 season, and what right now seems like a team that's just trying to struggle and scratch and claw to get to 500.
And they do improve to 4-5, and nobody still, even with the Redskins winning today, it's not like we think the Redskins are just going to kind of run away with this thing. It's just they just don't seem like the kind of team that can do that. All right, Stretch, you've been probably as critical as anybody in the media of this wide receiver group. What did you make of them? Obviously, Cooper's given them a different dimension, and he had several catches this evening, but also Hearns and Gallup both made big plays in the passing game. Of course, Cole Beasley. How much of that is Cooper, and what did you see from the receivers? They did have that one boneheaded play where Collinsworth went and showed it, and you had players running out of bounds, and nobody really ran a route, nobody got open. But for the most part, they made some pretty good plays tonight.
Well, and I saw Cooper make some physical plays. I mean, do some things from a physicality standpoint that I thought were really kind of send a vibe through this group. I mean, I think he obviously has opened this up a little bit. You got to account for him. And when I say account for him, we're back to being in a situation where they have to account for him in a coverage standpoint. I'm saying, you can say Dez wasn't a number one here, but Dez dictated coverage, and I think now you're seeing that with Amari Cooper. He dictates coverage now. In that route that Collinsworth drew up, I mean, obviously there was some busts there, but I saw a receiving corps tonight who stepped their game up in association with an offensive line group who stepped their game up, a quarterback who stepped his game up, and I thought they stepped their game up. And I have been critical of that group and not being able to get separation, not driving back to the ball, not getting in those open windows, but they were able to do that tonight. And what I liked again is Amari Cooper's physical side. I mean, when he catches the football, he's hitting that thing north and south. I mean, he took a shot tonight on a shallow cross, and it didn't bring him down. I mean, he took a big-time shot and then got the first down. So those are all things that you want to see out of this group because that type of play is contagious to other guys. And so but because of that, I mean, I'm going to give that group a B+ also.
Wow, B+ is, I think, the lowest grade so far this evening might have been a B on the defensive line.
I think we might have the lowest grade yet to come, though, if we ask Stretch to grade the special teams and Brett Maher, who's now missed 3 kicks in 3 weeks and 4 this season. Could this be a failing grade?
Well, you know what, let's say the tight ends. I thought Schultz showed up, did some good things tonight. I thought Noah Brown came in there. He's kind of a tight end / receiver hybrid. He's a physical blocker. I mean, I thought the tight ends played well. And, yeah, I'm going to give that group a B. But Maher, the concern I have is that, I draw the golf analogy. I mean, does he have the shanks? I mean, there's no reason for him to miss that kick tonight, and it really almost cost the Cowboys. Now, the thing I'm going to do is kind of grade them as a whole because I did think the 4th down snap to Heath, and he stuck it up in there north and south to get the first down. That really kept them from getting a failing grade, and for that I got to give that group a C.
All right.
Oh, there you go.
They get the C, and you heard the tight ends. You've been very critical of the tight end play as well, but obviously Schultz came in there, broke a tackle tonight on one of those plays, and did some nice things, and then Swaim did some of those things that Witten used to do with some of those intermediate routes and 5 yards, 8 yards around there. So they did some all together. They did a fairly nice job, and it's kind of interesting to see big number 80, even at some very crucial points in the game. They have him in there blocking, so it's interesting. Didn't throw it to him, but interesting to see him in there. I Stretch.
I know when you see that in there, and you got, I'm sure tonight you got your Baylor little boy's pants on underneath it, so you're rooting on him. So I have an appreciation for that. So. You know what? Good for you, Matt. We'll keep the Baylor boy going another week.
All right, the Bears are one game away from being qualifying for a bowl. Stretch, always fun to have you on. Good seeing you on TV this evening, and even better hearing you on the Doomsday podcast, where you've become a very, very popular personality.
I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate it, Ed. You guys have a great evening.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith, making his way back to Parker County, and that's a Stretch. Boy, always good to be with Stretch. I thought that Ed, Stretch was not quite as profane in this outing, so it'll
only
be a
one
little
profanity compared to 3 or 4 last week.
Yeah, it'll be a little easier for our the youth out there that like to listen to this podcast, and we appreciate everybody who listens. And I know you were kind of charting and watching what Amari Cooper was able to accomplish tonight, and he's certainly added another layer to this offense. And I don't know if he's you'd say he's ignited it, but I mean, this is one of certainly one of Dak's better performances of the season, if not his best. What have you sort of gleaned from watching Amari Cooper, especially after tonight's performance?
Well, I think when you watch Dak Prescott, it's clear that he has a trust level and a sense of timing with Amari Cooper in 2 weeks that he's never achieved with any of the other Cowboys receivers, with the possible exception of Cole Beasley. And Cooper's now played 2 games for the Cowboys since they traded a number 1 draft pick to Oakland to acquire him. He's been their leading receiver in both games, had a team-high 6 catches for a team-high 75 yards in this game. So now in 2 games, he's got 11 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown in the 2 games. And just talking to somebody with the Cowboys tonight after the game, they said that's why we made the trade. Can't believe nobody talks about the Rams giving up a 1 and then paying Brandon Cooks, but they're all out there killing us. They said people are going to have to figure out, in terms of opposing defense, they're going to have to figure out whether to load the box and stop Zeke or double Amari. Either way, it makes Hearns and Beasley and Gallup and our tight end more viable too. So obviously they feel like this has been, the early results indicate that this is a beneficial trade for them. Obviously, every time they win, it lowers the amount that they wind up giving up, the value of the pick that they give up to the Raiders. And every time they lose, it increases the value of the pick the Raiders acquire for giving up Amari Cooper. But I think the Cowboys feel like, given that he's 24 years old, that he's going to be a cornerstone type player for them to build around on offense going forward beyond whatever they get from him this year.
Does the fact that he seems to have been integrated and doing really well already, and it's been so smooth, does that speak to just his talent level and what Dak's been able to accomplish with him, or does that speak to the simplicity of this offense that is just almost too easy to understand?
Probably some of both. And when you talk about desperation, I think you see the Cowboys trying to do whatever they can to give their quarterback a chance to be successful, recognizing that they didn't do that until 2 weeks ago. That they released their first and second leading receivers from a year ago in Dez Bryant and Jason Witten, and did not adequately replace either player or fortify either position. And now, they brought up 2 receivers who had not played much this year. They didn't play big roles, but the Cooper trade was obviously the biggest of them all. And then if you compare what he's done since being one of the 3 receivers acquired in a trade, Golden Tate, this was his debut for the Eagles. He had 2 catches for 19 yards. Demaryius Thomas, the Broncos traded him to the Texans. He had 3 catches for 61 yards in his debut, and Amari Cooper had 5 for 58 and a touchdown in his debut. So he's been as good or better than any of the receivers traded during the deadline. Yeah,
and it's one of those rare occasions where usually you wouldn't be that excited to get traded to a 3-5 team, but the team he was on is going nowhere, and so in some ways they have
their sights set on the number 1 overall pick in the draft at 1-8.
That's true. And then you're going to have 3 first-rounders, so they're totally tanking and looking for the future. I thought one of the more obvious points that Collinsworth made, and he's fine. I know people beat up on these announcers. And I think Chris does a fine job. I thought it was a pretty funny thing that he said, hey, the biggest difference in these 2 quarterbacks is that right now one is just way better at throwing on the run than the other. It's like, okay, no. I wish Stretch was here. He could throw out a kind of a real no expletive because Wentz is playing a different game. Wentz has the sort of arm talent it's remarkable, and I thought NBC did a good job of slowing that one play down, and it was kind of funny that with Damian Wilson grabbing his wristband, that he was somehow fighting through that and made an accurate throw. Yeah, made the throw. So, he's on a different level right now than Dak. Now, they're just
he was the second pick of the draft.
Certainly.
Dak was
fourth round.
What, a third-day pick. And NBC had the great graphic tonight, most touchdown passes over 20 games with fewer than 10 picks, and it's Aaron Rodgers with 58 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Tom Brady with 54 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And the third guy is Carson Wentz, 48 touchdowns and 9 picks. So Dak outplayed Carson Wentz when they were rookies. Carson Wentz then was a leading candidate to be the MVP last year in what proved to be Philadelphia's Super Bowl winning season. But he got hurt late in the year and missed the rest of that year while, Dak's team kind of struggled throughout the season. And Dak's team has struggled again this year. So I don't think there's any question. If you ask any general manager in football, they'd all prefer Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is obviously a better thrower of the football in any situation than Dak is. Dak's a more physical runner, but I don't think there's any team and any general manager or any coach in football who wouldn't want Carson Wentz over Dak Prescott.
If you were picking right now between Goff and Wentz, who would you take?
Wentz. I still think that Wentz is naturally a more accurate thrower. I think he throws with more velocity, and I think he's in general a better athlete than Jared Goff is. I know that when Sean McVay took over, he was very skeptical about Jared Goff being his long-term quarterback and was actually considering a plan where they were going to go out and get Kirk Cousins to be the quarterback. He had coached him in Washington, knew he was a pending free agent. So Goff, to some degree, surprised McVay and his coaching staff, and has obviously proven to be an elite quarterback in that system. But I think Wentz is a more talented athlete with better ability to throw on the move, more general athleticism and accuracy and arm strength. So I would take him.
Yeah, and can I just say that I think if Dak Prescott had somebody like Zach Ertz or even Goddard, who they were able to take, I believe, in the second round. They picked another. Isn't it amazing how the Cowboys missed on tight end after tight end, and they obviously
took him right in front of the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, I believe they did.
The Cowboys took Connor Williams, one pick after Philadelphia traded up for Goddard.
I think you're exactly right.
The Cowboys were going to take a tight end.
And Goddard looks like he's going to be a good one. Selleck and Ertz were a great combination, and now it looks like Goddard and Ertz are going to. Ertz had 13 catches tonight for about I think 122 yards.
He also had, this was his fourth career game with multiple touchdowns, and it's like his fourth, and it's the first time that the Eagles have lost one of those games.
Yeah, and but he is a remarkable player. And this is a team we will see. I mean, the conventional wisdom, the thought was they were just going to get annihilated by Atlanta. We were hoping we were going to have a fun down the road looking at the 29th. We thought we were going to have a fun matchup with the Saints, but sadly, what happened with Dez? Yeah, he tore the Achilles. And thought it was kind of cool. It had to make Dez feel pretty good. Jalen Smith tonight after a big play threw up the X. There were a couple of players for the Saints that threw up the X. Yeah, and across the league, actually, people showing some love for Dez. I mean, he is a well-liked guy, I think, across the league. People just like Dez Bryant, and you just hope that Dez, maybe he gets to play someday again, but really, really tough setback for him. But
especially given that now, he's it seemed like he had himself in going into a perfect situation where he could sort of reestablish his market value and take part in free agency from the beginning, which didn't happen last spring because the Cowboys cut him 3 weeks into free agency. But, he had this chance to work with this, wizard of a play caller in Sean Payton and a Hall of Fame quarterback who's at his zenith right now throwing the football and was, defenses were going to be devoting coverage to Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, and he was going to get these great matchups. And then to have it all go away on the final play of just his second practice is got to be really demoralizing for him. He's going to be 30 years old and missing a full season and coming back from a torn Achilles tendon and already viewed as a guy who has trouble at the wide receiver position creating separation. So I fear this injury is going to devalue him further. And Sean Payton said, hey, we'll try it again next year. But, that's nice of him to say, and maybe it'll happen. But the equation changes in terms of personnel that the team has and needs every game they play.
It does. But the big news tonight, Cowboys improved to 4-5, 27-20, an improbable road win over the defending world champs. And Ed, I just want to thank our production staff there in Colorado. And then, of course, locally here with Mark Friedman does such a tremendous job at the Frito Nation Productions. This has become one of the top producing podcast in the country in terms of team podcasts, and we appreciate everybody. Continue to come to us. We've got a growing group, Ed, on Facebook. Every time you share something on our Facebook page, the Doomsday Podcast Facebook page, that seems to create quite a splash. And then, of course, on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, so many different ways you can be a part of the Doomsday Podcast. We appreciate it. Everybody who's partnered with us, attempted to partner with us, we can be tough to work with, but we really enjoy what we do.
Well, we do entertain all offers.
Yes, we certainly do. But thanks. And by the way, Hodges Capital, speaking of partners, unbelievable group that they are and what they do in downtown Dallas. Craig and Clark Hodges do a tremendous job. And for people that want to invest some money, if you got a lot of it, they'll do it for you. Even if you just got a little bit, they'll point you in the right direction. But they just do an unbelievable job. And it started out with equity funds, 25, 30 years ago. They've been doing it a long, long time, and they're some of the best in the business, and that's why you see Craig show up on CNBC and all the TV shows. They go to him to find out, hey, what should we do with Tesla? This Tesla stock's looking bad. Should we buy now? They want to talk to a guy who's a partner with us, and that is Hodges Capital. Ed, for Frito Nation Productions and myself, I just want to say goodnight to everybody. And Ed, is there any final thing you want to say to our audience?
I will leave you with this. With the Cowboys winning tonight, the Eagles are now 4-5. They're 2 games behind the Redskins, as are the Cowboys in the NFC East, and likely the only playoff team to come out of the NFC East will be the division winner. There won't be a wild card berth out of this division. So it's worth noting there have been 52 Super Bowl champions. Only 16 have failed to make the playoffs the next year, and the Eagles could be next.
Wow. Good nugget there from Ed to end things. Want to thank Glenn Stretch Smith, Mark Friedman, everybody who's been a part of this one. Cowboys win it 27-20. It has been the Doomsday Podcast. Good night, everybody.
Stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now. You don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it. Between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.